everyone, it's Ben from Witching Hour, and today we're doing a daytime walkthrough of the Myers facade from 2020. If you haven't already, I recommend checking out a full video of our display. A friend of ours captured some great footage of it, and I've posted a link to his video at the top of this window. You can also find the full show on our channel as well. Alright, well, we finally compiled all the footage together and are excited to hopefully answer any questions you guys had about our facade. This was the biggest build we have ever done, and was really the first time we built outside our home altogether. Originally, the display was designed to be a walkthrough maze modeled after something you would experience at Halloween Horror Nights at Universal. However, with the pandemic in 2020, we made the call several months out to just build a facade for the maze and convert it into a drive-by display. The facade is completely modeled after the Myers house from John Carpenter's 1978 film, Halloween. In the film, you see the Myers house in two different states. First, when the film opens in 1963, you see the house when it's being occupied by the Myers family. Then the film flashes forward 15 years, and you see the home in its dilapidated, rundown state. We wanted to replicate the house in its rundown state, but also include elements that you see in the opening of the film. One of the looks we wanted to capture was the moonlight through the trees that you see on the Myers house throughout the film. To do that, we used 3 Chauvet Easy Gobos with a textured breakup gobo. We added a Roscoe 65 gel, and it really gave that ghostly moonlight look we were hoping for. The Strode Realty sign a friend of ours did the art for, and then we printed the design on a yard sign from Staples. Emily went in afterwards and provided the aging so that it matched the rest of the house. The flickering pumpkin you see at the very opening of the film before the house was dilapidated. It's such a classic look, we wanted to make sure it was featured in our design as well. We bought one of those carvable pumpkins from Michaels, and Emily carved out the face. We then hollowed out the center of the porch railing to fit the socket that held the flicker bulb. These flicker bulbs are candelabra-sized bulbs that you can find on Amazon, and they give a realistic and bright effect. The address was one of the funniest parts of the whole project. Throughout the whole design process, I knew I wanted to include the original address of the Myers home. The house they filmed still exists today in Pasadena, California, but it has changed from its original location. There was a lot of discrepancy on what the address actually was. In the film, it is really challenging to make out all 3 numbers. When we researched the original address, there were many sources citing the address to be 707 Meridian Avenue. For the longest time, we went with that address. It wasn't until a couple weeks out from the install that we were watching the Blu-ray version of Halloween, and we found one scene that captured the address. It turned out the actual address of the house was 709. Luckily, we had enough time to swap the numbers out before we installed. The porch light was another element at the beginning of the film that you only see before the house was condemned. We wanted to add the light to add some additional movement to the scene we were trying to create. We found this fixture at one of the big box stores, and Emily went in and aged it to look like it was filled with dirt and grime. The front door actually changes twice in the film. At the beginning of the film, it's a white door with decorative trim. Once the house becomes dilapidated, for some reason the door changes to green. We felt that the cracks and detailing would show up better if we kept the door white. The door is essentially another flat that we built. It is completely detailed from the front but isn't skinned on the back side. It is a functioning door that we made so that it opens and closes when we eventually build the maze. The doorknob and plate were painted to look like rusted metal, however, it is just 1/8 inch underlayment material that Emily aged. We added plexiglass to the inside of the door to give that broken glass look. The no trespassing sign was a specific prop to track down. A lot of signs that you can buy locally have additional words on them. We found a website that sold no trespassing signs that looked just like the one in the film. Emily added some aging on it and it was ready to go. The dead and dying plants out front are completely real and were actually at our house when we first moved in. They were already dead when we got here, and so we just kept them. Emily did some work to make them stand up and added some additional foliage underneath. The corbels were a detail we really tried to replicate from the film. For this, we actually looked at reference pictures from the Myers house in its current location today. They've done an excellent job preserving it, and there are many high quality photos online where you can see exactly how these corbels look. For the two in the center, Emily drew out the design, and I cut them with my jigsaw using 8-inch fence boards. For the corbels in the front, because they were wider, I cut them out using 2x6 boards. One of the most important details to me of the Myers house is the iconic window layout. The home is completely symmetrical and includes a pair of double-hung windows on each side of the house centered over the single long windows on the lower level. It's one of the features that makes this such a recognizable structure from the movies. I framed out the windows using 1x4 furring strips and added 1x2 decorative trim on top. The one detail that was impossible to replicate was the colonial porch columns that you see in the film. Real ones would have cost more than this entire project. We decided to just go with 4x4s, and with the aging, I really think it still conveys the same effect. The beams holding the porch ceiling are actually hollow, which allow for easier attachment. I made the faux beams out of 1x4 furring strips, and they break down into sections. The seams between each section are hidden behind each of the corbels. One of the details that was hard to see from the street were all the cracks in the ceiling of the porch. The entire scenic design was treated with a crackle paint technique. Crackle painting is a 3-step process and used by many scenic decorators. Emily first painted a black base coat. She then painted on Elmer's glue and allowed the surface to get tacky. Before the Elmer's glue dried, she painted an antique white top coat. The cracks are formed as the top coat is drying. The Elmer's glue causes the paint to not evenly dry, which reveals the base color. It is definitely a time-consuming process, but really sells the look of a rundown house. We went heavy with the cracks to be sure that it would read from the street. Under show conditions, the effect really looked great. The roof is completely made out of 4x8 foam insulation sheets. We did that to cut down on the weight and to also create a faux shingle look. For the shingles, I measured and traced out the lines where the shingles would go. Then I used a solder iron to cut grooves along the lines. This is a technique that many haunters use to create faux brick effects. When used and painted in this way, I think it did a great job to look like shingles on a house. To give the illusion that the house is bigger than it really was, I used a little forced perspective on the second story flats. The flats on the second story are only 6 feet as opposed to the 8-foot flats on the first level, and all the trim around the windows on the second story is smaller than the first story windows. We wanted the facade to be lifted off the ground to give a more realistic look like it does in the film. Because this will eventually be a walkthrough attraction, we only made the decking high enough to give the feel of a lifted porch, but still allow guests to walk through. Emily used a faux wood grain tool to make the plywood look like individual wood planks. Back behind the facade, you can see exactly how the flats were built. Everything was built in sections, and it was made exactly like a movie set. We used 1x3s and 1/8-inch underlayment material for the sheet goods. We made the whole facade modular, which made it great for storing and also allowed for quick assembly and for strike. All in all, the front of the facade breaks down into 6 sections, with 4 additional sections for the returns on the sides. We built everything up on a deck for both a design purpose and to secure everything in place. The entire facade is self-standing and each flat mounts into the decking. My biggest concern when first building was the height. We occasionally get high winds here, and I wanted to make sure nothing would topple over. In total, the top of the roof stands around 16 feet. I added some additional stabilizers that secured the second story to the first story. When everything was installed, it was really secure. The beams you see here are actually not for support, but actually hold the projector mounts in place, which you will see a little later. For more information on how flats like these are built, I've linked a video series that Hollywood Haunter did. They show in great detail exactly how studio flats are made, and were an amazing resource when we tackled this project. Here's our static Michael figure. During the day, he looks absolutely ridiculous. However, at night, really comes to life under the right lighting. Doing a show that was heavy on projection, we really wanted guests to get just a glimpse at Michael. At the end of the show, we had a light special fade in, which created a scrim effect using a lace curtain in the door window. The effect had guests surprised every night. There is a lot to talk about with regards to projection. We plan on creating a video series that explains our process and will explain how we filmed the silhouettes and what tools we used to map the projection to the windows. For now, here's a look at the projectors we had in place. We utilized two projectors and both rear projected onto the second story windows. We created mounts that would hold the projectors in place without having to be mounted into the roof. We attached the mounts to 2x3s that ran back to the facade. This prevented the projector mounts from moving or sliding down the roof. We added some jugs full of water for weight, and it kept everything from shifting around during the course of the run. Well, that's pretty much it. The Myers Facade project took over a year between planning, drafting, building, painting, and programming. The actual install itself took a day and a half and ran for 2 weeks during October of 2020. We were already in the works on designing and building the maze portion that was originally intended and plan to implement it this year depending on the state of the pandemic. Let us know what you think of our display in the comments below. Do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. If you are new to our channel, please give us a like and subscribe to be notified on our updates. For more information on our current projects, please be sure to follow us on our Instagram. Thanks everyone, we'll see you next time.